Oseo.
Oseo.
That's a Cherokee greeting, and wave the great feather for the good of it. That summons the spirits. Today is Palm Sunday, and so my theme today is going to be just simple, Yaqui Easter. And we're going to see how we get started with that. And I have a lot of anecdotal experiences behind all this, but I'm going to try and keep it simple down to what I've illustrated here. So I'm going to start out with the Palm Sunday. And we'll go right here. This is what is representing this day here. And what I have here is an image of an ancient woman, and this is a fan palm spear, behind her. Generally, people seem to know what Palm Sunday is about. In the story, Melchizedek is riding into town, Jerusalem, on a burro, and people are waving palms, palm branches, and throwing them down, and they are saying, Oxiana, Oxiana, like that. So this is very, very ancient. Can I right here say all this of the Mideast that seems to culminate, in the story that people are recognizing and celebrating today is like, what can I call it? An ancient Mideast smoothie. There's so much that has been blended together from all different times, going back thousands, 8,000 years, back to Sumer. And it's sort of a literary smoothies, what I would call it here. So the earliest that we know in Sumer, I'm saying like roughly 8,000 years, is the goddess, that's Ninana. Ninana is pretty much the name all the time here. And it's the idea of the palms being, palm fronds being waved and brandished like that is very significant. I remember some places when I was a youngster, some places today, in those days on Sunday would pass out little slips of palm fronds, little pieces of the palm leaf there to signify that. All of this story is taking place in areas of the Eastern Mediterranean, including Egypt, that is kind of like a desert here. And the people that I'm particularly featuring today, known to the Americans and Mexicans as Yaquis, the Ojime, also they live in the desert there, especially in Guadalupe, Arizona here. So all this is just to give an idea here that the palm, the celebration of the palm, and the name actually of Hosiana is actually celebrating the ancient goddess of the palm that is known as Ninana. And out here, the people in the desert east of San Diego, the Americans call Coyote, the names of these deities and the palm, Ninmo is the name for the palm, is all very much related to the Eastern Mediterranean. Many of the people here in this country, the Southwest and Mexico, have in ancient times perhaps, including the Yaquis, have stemmed from the Mediterranean. And the various names of people, definitely show that. The character in the story, being celebrated as a Melchizedek, Malchi. Malchi is used by the Pima there in Arizona as Earthmaker. So there's a lot of references, to that, to say that this is a very ancient theme, and so forth. Now I can go up here and look at my centerpiece here. And I've created this. I can tell you that, I was a graduate art student in Mexico, and my main project turned out to be, Mexican art history. And my principal character in that was Diego Rivera, and he was foremost in giving interest and value to the pre-Hispanic indigenous culture and its art. And so I did a lot, with him here. So some of these creations have come out of that. Basically what I have here, that this is a tree in the shape of a cross. And on top there is the head of a deer. And the antlers are actually sacred arrows, in which is called the arrows of Tatawati, who hunts the deer. So all of this is to say, this kind of sacred thing. Crosses in Mexico are, numerous, prolific, you would say. The Spanish even found evidence that the crosses were there before the Spanish brought their cross. It was funny, the Yaquis were here visiting with us, the whole troop. They stayed in our house here. And we went to Old Town. And I was telling them that this is where the Spanish, when they got off their ship, they came ashore and they planted a cross. And Carmelo, the chief there, he said, oh no, he said, those Spanish, they don't know anything. We told them. Well, that's fairly true of the matter. The crosses already existed in this country and in Mexico before the Spanish came there. And some places, like in Yucatan, the ancient ruins of the Mayans, there's a place that's called the Temple of the Foilated Cross. And the Spanish saw that and they thought, oh, the Christians were already here, and so forth. So the crosses really have meaning in Mexico and in Guadalupe, Arizona. The cross has a identity for lineage and for villages and for families like that. And they were also a sort of, what can I call, a badge of resistance to Spanish rule by drawing on the Christian symbol and transforming it into something that's like that has a soul in it. I can try and call it that way. And so in Mexico and in the Yaqui village, there are many crosses, and these crosses have all various names like that. So that's the way I'm introducing this. This one here, this has to do with a story told by the Pascola like that. I can't do it anymore. But here he's come out as the gourd. He's come from the blood, here in the ground, and then he's grown into a vine, and out of the vine comes the gourd. And speaking of crosses, we'll look at this one right here. The main group of people in the ceremony in Yaqui, in Guadalupe, are called the Cotombre. I don't know, there's many, they can be up, maybe into hundreds of men. They're usually dressed in black for certain parts of the ceremony. Well, this is their cross. This is their cross for this occasion. And on it I have the rosary, the Yaqui rosary, and I have attached to it an image of a scorpion, because I think that's very much a part of the culture, and I see images of scorpions, throughout the ceremonial things in the ceremony. So like that. You can go over here and look at this. I show this every year if I have occasion to do it. Here in Guadalupe, Arizona, at first we lived adjacent, actually Tempe, adjacent to the village or pueblo of Guadalupe. This was quite a few years ago. It was fairly sparsely populated at that time. And we were taken in by invitation into the ceremony, and then more or less became adopted as we became padrinos, godparents here, and that's what this is about. Here, this is the picture of myself with Comadre Maria Alvarez. And Maria Alvarez was the principal person in this village here. And and she made this whole piece for me, and on the back she's written in Spanish, this is so you can remember me. And indeed, I'm happy to do that. And here, in this picture here, this is Claudia and our comadre, Anita, with the baby, and we became the godparents or the padrino. And of course, he's grown up, and sometimes he watches my talks about the Yaquis here. And if you go up here and you see his drawing I did, the principal person that actually got me to Guadalupe, his name is Juan Casillas. And I was at a fiesta celebration Salt River, the Pima Reservation, because I was visiting some college friends who actually lived right next to this reservation. And I was watching a group of dancers, they call them the Ballet Folklorico, and it turned out, I didn't know at the time, but a young man was dancing there. He was actually Madre Maria's son, Leno, and he turned out to be the deer dancer in the ceremony. And Juan Casillas is his uncle. And that's how I got to Guadalupe at the very beginning. So this is my drawing of Juan Casillas as the deer dancer. He danced both the deer and he also danced as the Pascola. So from year to year, I was learning from him about the ceremony. At the end of his life, as it turned out, I had a dream, and in the dream, I should say, in the, I don't know what it's called, the mythical or legendary place where the Yaquis are from in Mexico, there is a cave, this is, like a mythical cave. And in the cave are all of these ceremonial objects, the masks and the deer head and all of these things. And a person in a dream would find there in this cave what, in terms of ceremony, they would become, like whether they become the deer dancer or they would become the Pascola, like that. So that's why I'm saying that's where this was taking place. And so in this cave, Juan Casillas is here in front of me, and he is giving me a little Pascola mask, and that's what I've symbolized there on top of the drawing. And this little mask he gave me in the dream and said it was more balanced than the other ones, and he nodded towards other masks that were hanging on the wall. Later I had learned that he had passed over to the other side, or to the underworld. So that's very important to see all of that here. And I think at this point I want to do a reading. I have some readings to go here with this. So I can look at this as the tree of life. Both the Yaquis and the Mayans are very similar because at the time of the Mexican period, Yaquis were deported, call it that, from their homeland there in Sonora to Yucatan to work on plantations there among the Mayans. And then many of the Yaquis on their own made it back to Sonora and to the Rio Yaqui. And so the evidence of the Mayan mixed in with the Yaquis is there as well. So there is something that comes together. So I want to read this piece that I've done. From year to year I've done this piece for my main display of the tree of life. Put forth my hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. His cross is the living tree, forever blooms in this eternal patio. Savor the Savior, Jesucrist, fruit everlasting of that true tree, where there he offers up his flesh and blood, for our meat indeed, for our drink indeed. Through that gate guards this flaming sword. His body in the garden grows and grows. La señal de la Santa Cruz, a response eternal of his presence and participation in the agony of all living creatures. La Señal de la Santa Cruz, face to face, body to body, blood to blood, man meets his Maker in this image of mutual sacrifice, atonement. His life aims to be born, birthing forth his eternal seedling. I am his son, born in me. So that's one expression I have for all of this. And if you can go all the way over there to the other side, I've done a lot of art relating to my experience in Guadalupe, and that's what this is. My drawing there is portraying there. That would be like a paracero or the costumbre, before the cross. On May 3rd, the cross is also feminine. The day, it's called Day of Holy Cross, where the cross will be, a cross will be displayed in the temple, wearing feminine clothing here. So there's something, suggested in all of that. So that's, pretty much my portrait, of that time in Guadalupe with the Pharisees. And next to it is a sword. It's a sword that I made, but not to, plainly look like their swords, but a suggestion of the painted swords that they also carry with them here. Also, I should get back to today, Palm Sunday, I'm trying to say. Today is the day that the deer appears out on the plaza in front of the temple. And in this case, I can show you this here. This is a deer head. Claudia made this out of stoneware. It's amazing to me because of the antlers. And she modeled it on the deer head that the dancer wears. So she has a ruff of fur around it. And we knew the man who actually, Luis Masso was his name. Masso is the name for the deer and the deer dancer. So that's very significant here as for the deer. The Yaquis and the Huichols live in the state of Nayarit in the mountains of the Sierra Madre, and they seem to have mostly escaped the Spanish Catholic overlay on the culture. So they do have the culture of the deer, and they have the culture of the deer also as hunting the deer and bringing the deer back and using his blood to anoint sacred objects. The English word of the word bless, actually comes from just that thing, putting blood on things, blessing things was putting blood on them. For the Yaquis, the deer has much more to do with, seems to me, a unicorn. The magic of the deer who lives in the flowered patio beneath the blue mountain that the songs, the beautiful poetry of the songs sing about, reminds me of a deer unicorn, you can put it that way. So that's, some of it here. And here, let me show you this picture here. This is my painting. This, for all the santos that I have seen and experienced, and some of them by comadre even prayed to for me or for us, this is kind of my votive to the santos. This is, El Señor de la Santa Cruz. He's the man of the Holy Cross, painted in a Mexican style. And here, hanging from it, this is the rosary of the Yaquis, the Rosario here. And so it's very interesting because it's made from a bush that grows in the desert, and somehow the we call little branches like that are cut in a way for beads, and the pith is removed so that the string can be strung through the bead. So it's all, a natural desert product, with the tassel on the end. Some of the ceremonialists who wear masks, they're called chapiekas, they hold that in their mouth all the time. They're wearing the mask so they don't talk here. So all of that. The being that I'm referring to as a pascola, old man of the fiesta, actually, if you can see up here, this mask I have put up here. I put this mask up here because it was actually in the ceremony. I actually obtained it from the pascola who was wearing it. And he was from Mexico, and he said his brother made that mask, and you can see it is in the shape of a goat. So it's very interesting because very much of the pascola lore, if I can call it that, seems to refer to a goat. And so some of the masks do look like that. And over on the other side I have another mask that I obtained from a Cherokee man in Arizona that I liked, and that is another pascola mask here. And if we can come over here to, this is my painting, and really I rather modeled it on my experience of Juan Casillas when he was dancing the pascola, and especially that to me is Juan's hand there. But this whole thing here is, a semblance of the pascola in his dancing pose, but this one is far more mythical. It just came out that this mask, does look like, Zorro, the skunk here. But the whole character here is really a cultural avatar. I was going to say a cultural avatar, the avatar of Quetzalcoatl, who is the arch hero of all of Mexico, culture hero of Mexico. In Aztec, he's called, Naquitl. Naquitl is, he's called the traveler, but his manifestation here is the sum of culture here. And so that's the significance that I'm putting here. And I have a piece that I exactly want to read for that as my experience in the ceremony in Guadalupe. Now, the scene there is that you have a temple, Tiopo, like that. And behind the Tiopo, there's a small hill. Before the Americans put a freeway in there, the village people could have a procession up to that hill. One of the Yaqui men, one evening, that is at dusk, took me to position so that I could look up west, up the plaza to the Tiopo and see exactly how they had the hill behind it, like that. And he said, I want you to see that because that's why we're here. That's why we're here where we are, the little hill, El Cerrito, here. So, this is my writing. Medianoche en Guadalupe, midnight in Guadalupe, when the animal is captured. I live for a moment in the heart of the deer. At just such hour, the mist walks, the fire and wind move. My body is the tongue of silence. Estoy con los viejos mirando. I am with old men watching. Escucha, escucha, el pascola. Hear, hear. The pascola barks clouds in his teeth, waves a moving tongue to wet his mouth opening. Los ciervos se empan entre la maleza. The deer jostle in the brush. Uno de ellos voltea y mira a Ramada. One of them looks back to la Ramada. Ahora la luna está alta. The moon is high now. El Rey is viejo. The king is old. The ceremony that's taking place in the Ramada, which is at the east end of the plaza from the Teopo here, is where the dancing of the deer is going on, and the dancing of the Pascola is going on, and also aside with it is what they refer to as the egg, that this is, the interval of once the man has died and he's been put in the story in the tomb. Here he's put into the egg, and it seems like they're fertilizing the egg overnight as they're taking care of it here. And the way that the music is being played, it's going through a sequence, and when it gets to midnight, that's when it's saying here at the end that the king is old. The dance and the music and everything reaches a real crescendo at midnight. And then starting at sometime in the early morning, a different set of tunes are played by the Campanello, who's playing the whistle. As the sun is coming up, the Ramada is faced towards the east. There it would be towards the Superstition Mountains. And as the sun is coming up, and it wakes up creatures, animals, and birds coming this way. So the songs go through that sequence until the morning is fulfilled. You put it simply that way. Other years we have actually done the deer songs. Claudia here, she's behind the camera. She was very much in the ceremony, carrying the dolls, we call them the doll mothers, and like that. We were compadres and so forth, so we were really in the ceremony. And our compadre, Pete, he was a deer singer, and he taught Claudia the deer song. Claudia is very, very savvy at learning these songs like that, and the rhythms of them, and the language of them. And as far as anybody could say, if they did, over there at the time, they never knew of a woman before that learned these deer songs. And I should also say at this point, the whole group of Yaquis, of the ceremonial people, stayed in our house. We lived adjacent to Balboa Park, and we were also members of the Anthropology Museum of Man there, who had invited the Yaquis from Tucson to come and play with their music and the deer dance like that. And so they actually stayed in our house. There were 16 of them. And the main thing that they wanted was beer. So Jack had to keep the beer run going. Like that. But they gave us a lot of things, that we inherited from them. And so one of them I'm going to show right here, if you can see that. This is a rasp. They have a name for it, And they're in the ceremony. There are 3 singers. They're kneeling on the ground, and they put this wooden rasp setting on the top of a turned over gourd, and they play it, very fast. And this is the breath of the deer. And then there's another one that is a large gourd turned over in a pail of water with a soft beater that goes boom, boom, boom. And this is the heart of the deer. So those are things that are being played for the music that is being danced by the deer. A man who's wearing the deer head, and he has rattles here. I didn't have any illustrations of that right now. But in place of Claudia not singing the deer songs today, I'm going to read you what the poetry is. Where are you standing in the wind? Dry grasses, straw, and shaking in the wind. Dry grasses, where are you standing in the wind? Dry grasses, straw, and shaking in the wind. Dry grasses. There, in the wilderness, the flower world, a pale blue cloud will be gray water at its peak. The mist will rain down on the flower ground, and shining, reaching bottom where you are only, standing in the wind, dry grasses, straw, and shaking in the wind. He's talking about the dew. So all of this is to honor our compadres in Guadalupe, and the beginning of Holy Week, Santa Semana, and Yaqui, Batnaca, myth time, and all the wonderful world life that we had there in Arizona with our Yaqui relatives. So all of this, to honor this, and Comadre and Juan Casillas and our godchildren, all of that.
Dios Emchinia.
Dios Emchinia. I should have started out saying that. The beginning is Dios Emchioque, then the end is Dios Emchinia, right? Yeah. Okay, give me applause. Thank you.